Love, the fourth pillar. Love is a word that carries so much weight that people often stop hearing what it really means. It becomes tangled in ideas of romance, devotion, possession, sacrifice, passion, loyalty, hope, and expectation. People speak about love as if it must always feel warm, or as if it is something you give only when you are ready, or something that appears only when life is gentle. But in the Ghost movement, love is not an emotion. It is not a decision, not a display, not a state of mind. Love is what remains. When everything else is stripped away, when stories fall apart, when certainty collapses, when identities shift, when memory rises, when presence becomes almost too honest to bear, what continues is love. Not the sentimental version, not the dramatic version, not the version that depends on agreement, harmony, compatibility, or desire. Love is the recognition that something in you is already connected to something in another, long before you understand why. Love is not something you create. It is something you uncover. You feel this more often than you realize. When someone you care about walks into the room and your chest softens without permission, that softening is love. When you reach out before you have decided to reach out, that movement is love. When you feel the echo of someone's pain in your own body, that resonance is love. When you hold on to a memory, even if it aches, because letting go feels dishonest, that holding is love. When someone leaves your life, and yet they continue to shape your thoughts, your choices, your rhythms, that continuation is love. Love is not always warm, it is always true. People often imagine love as the uplifting part of life, but love has its own weight. Sometimes love is quiet, steady, almost invisible. Sometimes it is the ache you cannot shake. Sometimes it is the loyalty you cannot explain. Sometimes it is the reason you cannot walk away, even when leaving would be easier. Sometimes it is the reason you do walk away. Love tells the truth long after the mind has chosen a side. Love reveals what matters. Love reveals who matters. Love reveals what you cannot pretend about. The presence of love does not mean a relationship is simple. Some of the most loving relationships are also the most complicated. Love does not guarantee harmony. It does not guarantee understanding. It does not guarantee longevity. It reveals the depth of the connection, not its predictability. People sometimes believe that if love is real, everything should feel easy. But love is often the reason things feel difficult. Love shows what you are protecting. It shows what you are avoiding. It shows what you are afraid to lose. Love is not the absence of conflict. Love is the presence of recognition. To recognize someone is to see them as they are, beneath their patterns, beneath their defenses, beneath their habits and fears. You recognize the person beneath their noise. You recognize the thread that runs through their life. You recognize the part of them that remains when all the versions of them change. And when you recognize someone at that level, love happens. Not as a choice, not as a strategy, not as a promise. It happens the way breathing happens. It is the natural response to seeing the truth of another human being. Love is not earned. Love is acknowledged. This is why love can break you open, not because it hurts, but because it reveals what has been waiting beneath the surface. When you love someone, you do not only meet their light, you meet their dark, you meet their memory, you meet their presence, you meet the places where they soften and the places where they close. You meet the parts of them that have survived things you will never fully know. To love someone is to be changed by their existence, whether or not they mean to change you. Sometimes the change is quiet, a shift in how you speak, a gentleness that appears only when they are near, a new understanding of yourself, a boundary you did not know you needed, a tenderness in how you move through the day. Sometimes the change is profound. Love can reshape a life, priorities, a sense of what is possible. It can open parts of you that had been locked away for years. It can bring memory to the surface. It can challenge the stories you have told yourself about who you are. Love does not always feel good, but it is always real. There are times when love requires you to stay, and times when love requires you to leave. There are times when love brings you closer, and times when it asks you to step back. Love does not control the outcome. It offers a truth that the outcome must honour. People often confuse love with attachment, desire, comfort, or familiarity. But love is not dependent on any of those. Attachment can fade. Desire can shift. Comfort can break. Familiarity can disappear, but love can continue. Even when a relationship ends, love can remain as the shape that connection left behind. A person you no longer speak to may still live quietly in your memories, your gestures, your decisions, your reactions. Their influence remains, not because you cling to them, but because love leaves traces. Love is the echo of what mattered. This is why grief is so difficult. Grief is love with nowhere to go because someone has died. It is love that has lost its form in the world, love that has been forced to become internal when it once had a place to land. Grief aches not because love has ended, but because love remains, and the person is no longer here to receive it in the way they once did. Love continues after death because love is not dependent on physical presence. Love is a form of presence. You see this clearly in parenting. The love you feel for a child exists before they can speak, before they can understand, before they can reciprocate. It exists before identity forms, before memory is established, before relationship becomes mutual. That love is not created by who they are. It is revealed by the connection between you, and it changes you long before the child knows what the word means. You also see it in friendships that survive distance or silence. Someone you have not spoken to in years can call you, and within minutes the connection feels close. The warmth has been stored in the space between you. The history remains alive. You recognize them the moment you hear their voice. Love has its own continuity. It travels through time without weakening. In intimate relationships, love sits beneath the movement of light and dark. Warmth is love. Conflict that forces honesty can be love. The ache when something breaks can be love. Relief when clarity returns can be love. The small recognitions, gestures, patterns, the unspoken knowing, quiet loyalty, moments where you soften without trying, all of this can be love. Love is not fragile. It is not delicate. It can survive what logic cannot explain. It can remain after disappointment, after absence, after rupture. Not because a relationship must continue, but because recognition does not vanish simply because the form of a relationship changes. Love is resilient. Love is difficult. Love is grounding. Love is disruptive. Love is clarifying. Love is tender. Love is fierce. Love is steady. Love is honest. And love is always bigger than your ideas about it. People often believe love asks for sacrifice or selflessness. But real love does not ask you to disappear for another. Real love asks you to remain yourself in the presence of another. Love thrives not in the absence of boundaries, but in the clarity of them. A boundary is not a barrier to love. It is a shape that allows love to move without collapsing. Love is not possession. Love is not obligation. Love is not rescue. Love is not control. Love is recognition and response. Love is the moment you see another as real. Love is the moment you soften without knowing why. Love is the moment you wish someone well, even when you cannot walk beside them. Love is the moment you stay, because leaving would wound the truth. Love is the moment you leave, because staying would wound it more. Love is the force that reveals your center. It brings the dot into contact with another dot. When two people recognize one another at this level, something profound happens, not dramatic, not cinematic, something quieter. They see one another beyond habit, beyond history, beyond story. They recognize the steady centre within the other. And in that recognition, love emerges naturally, not as a feeling that must be sustained, not as a promise that must be upheld, but as a truth that remains. Love is what lets you endure the movement of light and dark. Love is what lets you stay present when memory rises. Love is what lets you soften when something painful appears. Love is what holds you when you can no longer pretend. Love is what stays when every version of you has shifted. And love has another effect. It reveals what sits underneath the surface of a life. It illuminates unspoken fears. It awakens old wounds. It exposes the deeper architecture that shapes a person from within. Some truths cannot be fixed by love. Some fractures are not resolved by tenderness. Some structures remain even when love is real. This is where the underside of the canon becomes visible, not as a rejection of love, but as the naming of what love cannot dissolve, the conditions that remain in place, even when the heart is open.